I'm going to keep the introductions very brief to allow the maximum amount of time for our speakers because they're really going to present a lot of quality today. But we do have bios over here as handouts, and so you can learn more about them. The important thing is that all three of them bring to us models of success, and they're here to tell us how to do it. What they've accomplished is that they have tailored programs and developed services for individual communities that meet the needs of those communities in the way that the communities want them met. They represent groups that have organized 501c3s, and they've done it through nonprofit venues. So Sharonn Meeks from the Housing Finance Commission works with nonprofits and helps to finance these kinds of projects. John Wheeler is from Leavenworth, and in Leavenworth he's going to tell us the story of how they expanded an assisted living facility that was the size of Heritage Heights and doubled it, and they're still continuing to expand it. They're now offering memory care and independent living, so they've already shown the way, and we'll learn how to do it. And then we have Glenn Schmeckel, and he wanted to sit in the audience today, but he's not incognito. And he is the founder and executive director of the Cove up in the Methow. So these folks have come to bring us their success stories and to be our partners so that we can be successful as well. We're surrounded to the north and the south with communities that really have expanded their senior living options, and it is possible. First, I'd like to introduce Sharonn Meeks. Sharonn comes from Oklahoma City, where she began her career. She had a very unusual niche where she worked with historic preservation, and she accessed programs from the Department of the Interior. So she's a pretty creative gal. She did grant writing, consulting, and she pulled this all together as a real estate broker, and she saved all kinds of projects and commercial properties and enhanced them. Then luckily she moved to the West Coast and came to Seattle, where she used all that real estate expertise to syndicate deals. And these syndications were sold to investors and brought additional money into real estate projects. So she understands money. She knows how to put projects together with money. And she went to the state of Washington with the Housing Finance Commission. She's actually their market development person. And this is how I met Sharonn originally about 5 years ago. And she developed a relationship with me and helped Heritage Heights refinance. We accessed a tax-advantaged program, and we were able to reduce our interest rate by half, which saved us substantial money that we were able to reinvest in operations. So with that, I'd like to introduce Sharonn Meeks to you and have her tell you about the kinds of programs they have. Thank you, Sharonn.
I always come prepared with all kinds of information. So I will try to be close, and as long as what I have on this screen is on that screen, we'll be on the same page. So this is an amazing turnout. I have to tell you, I was in Yakima on Friday. I was in the Tri-Cities on Saturday. Then over to Snohomish and a couple other counties. This is the biggest crowd I've seen, and it's really encouraging. And I appreciate your attending. So I wanted to start with, most people have probably no idea who the Washington State Housing Finance Commission is. We were, in 1983, 82, there was another recession. We've had a couple since then. But I've been with the commission 21 years now. I brought a real estate and a securities background with some statistics along the way. So I managed to put together a couple of programs and working with the Housing Finance Commission to kind of move things forward. And all of our programs are not specific to the I-5 corridor by any means. You know, we're very cognizant that we need to be doing affordable housing, senior housing, assisted living statewide. That is our mandate. So as a beginning, in 1983, we are a governor-appointed commission. We do not have none of our overhead, salaries, rent, anything is paid from the general fund. We charge fees for our services. We are totally self-contained, and we don't make loans, but we have access to the tax-exempt bond market because we are the only entity in this state that can declare that a 501c3 is in fact doing only what they state that they intended to do with the IRS. And once we deem it to be a tax-exempt purpose, the niche here is that the nonprofit gets a commercial loan, the bank buys the bond, because the bank will not be paying as much interest on that commercial loan. They pass the savings down to the nonprofit, and it can be significant. Like Amanda said, cut their interest rate in half. So it just depends on, you know, what the particular situation is and how fiscally capable the entity can be repaying the bond. We're not just doing housing. So that's why I brought this brochure. You might want to take a look at it. You can see the various different programs that we do provide. Because we know how to issue tax-exempt bonds, as different interest groups came through and the legislature decided that they needed to have money for those groups, rather than create a whole new entity in government, they would simply call us up and say, why don't you staff this up and figure out how to issue these tax-exempt bonds in the most efficient way. So I've been through this process and have issued, well, in our 501c3 program, we have just crossed the $1.1 billion mark, which was pretty significant for us. We did 167 different nonprofits. We also do the low-income housing tax credit, and I know some people in the Chelan County are familiar with that. The low-income housing tax credit is a federal program. Probably right at 80% of all affordable housing in the United States uses the low-income housing tax credit. There are two forms of that. There's a 9% that gives you more money. There's a 4% that gives you half that amount. And I'll go through some statistics in Chelan County about where and how many units of those have been provided. We also do the first-time home buyer. We've issued many, many, many millions of bonds for first-time home buyers to purchase their home. We also do a sustainable energy trust, which we just created. Our offshoot programs, when we make a profit, we put it into our program investment fund. From the program investment fund, we started things like our sustainable energy trust. That's where an individual, not an individual, a company or an entity, a nonprofit, commercial building, if they want to save on energy, they can borrow up to $1 million from us for a substantially less amount of money than going to a commercial loan. We also do the first-time farmer rancher program. We've done a couple of those in this area, and it's become pretty popular. It's an excellent way for older farming families, etc., to be able to subdivide and make it a sustainable farm without having to give the farm away to the children. They actually buy it. So that's been pretty successful for us. So I wanted to drill down on the specifics in Chelan County. And to date, through the Housing Finance Commission, we have built 222, or we have financed 220 units of affordable housing, 14 affordable properties, which include 5 properties that are elderly. And when I say elderly, you could be 55 years of age or older. And we've done 114 units of assisted living in Chelan County. When you look at our overall map, which is much better detailed in this brochure, and if you didn't get one, I have plenty more, you can see the impact that the Housing Finance Commission has had over the last 38 years. I believe at this point in time, there are only 5 counties that have never used one of our programs, and I'm glad to report that Chelan has, but it's definitely building. The popularity of the 501c3 program, which Amanda used, is we took standardized bond documents, which are enormous, and we just synthesized them down into a boilerplate so that when the bank says, this is what we can loan you over a certain period of time, and this is the interest rate, we drop those into the bond documents. As I said, the entity gets a commercial loan, the bank is buying that bond. The commercial loan and the bond documents perfectly match each other. And because of that, instead of going on the open market, our fee to issue a bond is 1% of the bond amount, which is pretty significantly low. We don't make any money on this deal. That's not our purpose. We're trying to give smaller communities, smaller nonprofits, an opportunity to fit into the bond market. If you go to the public sale, which we do public sales, you're looking at borrowing a minimum of $50 million to even make it worth your time. I can tell you that we did the Seattle Art Museum Sculpture Park several years ago because they are a C3. Those $57 million in bonds were sold in 7 minutes. So they're pretty popular. With the STEP program, Streamlined Tax Exempt Placement, you know, we usually look for deals that are $7 million or less, but we can also do and have funded through our program investment fund another small bank that will issue commercial loans in the area of $250,000. So if you have a particular project in mind or have a project that you want to grasp towards, you know, don't think that your deal is too small, because we can work with you and we will find a way to put it together and make it happen. So this process, because we are called a conduit issuer, we don't get involved in the negotiations with the bank. That's between the nonprofit and the bank. They determine and will be doing their underwriting just like they would on any other commercial loan. And then once you find that you've come to agreement on terms, then you make an application to us. We take that application and go through a pretty rigorous questionnaire about the capacity of the nonprofit. Are you going to be repaying this? Are you doing only what the IRS thinks you're doing? In other words, I've had museums say, well, we throw a lot of weddings. That does not work because you know, you're a nonprofit, you're not in the business of throwing weddings. So we recognize that, you know, for a lot of museums that is a piece of income, but we also have a way that we can fix that because we would just carve out the square footage where the wedding is held and issue a different bond, a taxable bond. So we're small enough and creative enough that we can usually come up with a pathway for whether it's an energy project or affordable housing, senior housing, assisted living. We have done quite a bit of memory care. We are in a position to issue the bonds if the primary purpose of the complex is to house either independently or assisted wise. But if the primary purpose is for nursing care or memory care, you would get that bond through the healthcare authority. So what kinds of projects are eligible? You can purchase land. You can have a long-term lease, as long as that lease is longer than the age of the bond to be retired. We can refinance existing debt, which we did for Amanda. We also have what we call our LAP program, which I've talked to a few people in this county about. Not everybody is ready to jump immediately into building something from the ground up. When they find a piece of property and they know that it's not going to be available much longer, you need to buy it today. We have a land acquisition program where we will loan you the money to buy that site, but no construction can begin for a minimum of 4 years. So it gives you an opportunity to say, this opportunity won't come back. We need to buy it now, and then begin the process of putting it together. These are a couple of examples. I have my Heritage Heights, photograph there, and we put that in there. We do private schools, as long as they are not pervasively sectarian. We've done 22 YMCAs. I'm working with the city of Yakima right now on their new aquatic center. We do museums, Goodwills. So anything that is C3 qualified, we can do. And I talk a lot, but I actually listen better. So, when we get done with this, I will definitely stay. I would be more than glad to answer any of your questions or give you maybe a little bit of guidance in where to start. But I thought most importantly, I found this as an interesting statistic. As of today, for each person that is over 80 years of age, they have 7 adult children or /spouses that could step in to care for them. I was born in 1950. My parents had, luckily, 10 people that could step in, but the average is 7. In 1930, that ratio drops 4 to 1. The baby boomers didn't have as many children. By 2050, 3 to 1. In 2010, we had 53,000 people that were 100 years of age or older. In 2050, pull under your hat, 3.2 million. I might be one of them. I'm not counting on it. But when you start realizing there will be fewer caretakers, there will be fewer people of working age, and you have a growing population of people that will see 100 years of age. So it's not just an issue for this room. We are recognizing that the average age that a person goes into assisted living now is 84. And there are a lot of reasons behind it. They're healthier, they saved. That's not happening anymore. So as Amanda can probably attest to here, we're finding that the affordable senior housing that's being built is the new assisted living. And that's all good, and we're very proud to be a part of that. But with that lower interest or that lower rate on your rent, you still need the services. So that is where your community comes into play. And there are a number of programs that have been going around nationwide. One of them I'm particularly interested in is called the Village Concept. Started in Boston. They have a community. Within 3 years, they grew to 5,000 members. Each individual home, husband and wife, or single, will pay $200 a year, and they can place a phone call and the light fixture gets fixed. that toaster gets removed. The oven knob that broke gets fixed. So there are so many interesting and I think appropriate ways that people can remain living in their homes as long as they can. But we do need the assistance. And when you have the opportunity through a village concept to be a neighbor, that's what I call it, you know, then I can see that being a very successful program. So I don't want to take any more of your time, but I will stay. And if anyone wants more use brochures or I can explain anything in there, I'd be glad to do it. Thank you.
So I hope that answers the first question that I got when we issued the final report from the Senior Living Initiative, and we came up with this huge need of 160 additional units now and 298 additional units in 15 years. We are looking for partners, and we have a partner in the Housing Finance Commission. And I think that this is one of the answers. There are others out there that these kinds of projects do have money available to them, that people are looking because it's important.